So I'm just going to talk about the Clipstone focal area. So I'm just going to briefly say why this area is so special, sort of looking at its current biodiversity resource, and then we're going to just focus in on a couple of sites and look at what work they've been doing on their sites and what potential work we could do in the future to make this focal area better, bigger and more connected. Okay, so this map shows the focal area. So it's sort of Mansfield on this side. We've got Reneth down in the south up to Rufford Abbey area, Centre Parks and Vikka Water in this area. So it's an almost continuous landform with just a byway that runs through it, which is just this bit. So no major roads or anything like that. At the centre of the focal area is the Sherwood Pines area and the Rufford Colliery site here. So the focal area encompasses many distinctive Sherwood natural character habitat which are produced by the underlying sandstone geology of the Triassic bunter pebble beds of the central Nottinghamshire. So key habitats in this area include lowland heathland, acid grassland mosaic, which is a nationally rare habitat. So we've lost quite a large proportion of this type of habitat in the wider Sherwood Forest over the last few centuries, so it makes what we have left really important. So Nottinghamshire heathlands are generally of a grass heath type, so with ling and bell heather interspersed with fine grasses such as wavy hair grass and then shrubs such as gorse. It's got nice pictures. Another priority habitat that's found in this area is mixed deciduous woodland, primarily that of oak birch woodland. Dominant trees are birch, mainly silver birch, but also downy birch can be found in the area. And oak, which is pedunculate, and sessile oak are also common within the focal area. There's normally a shrubbery layer as well associated with the oak birch woodland, which is made up of holly and rowan in our area. And then underfoot you'll find bracken and bramble. Also, this focal area actually has got some really nice wetland habitats, nice pictures, which is uncommon sort of for the Sherwood landscape. So these include sort of lake areas, shallows and marshy habitat. So associated with these great priority habitats are some really special species, of which some are of conservation concern. For example, the nightjar is a priority species, which is a summer visitor to the UK and is a characteristic nocturnal bird of sort of heathland and wood pasture, sort of woodland edges, you'll find this one. And another ground nesting bird is the woodlark, which also favours open dry habitats that are found on the heathland and acid grassland. So both these populations are quite decent within our area, but they are affected sort of by loss and fragmentation of suitable habitat, lack of management, and also more now, whereas we're sort of working on linking up our habitats and managing them better, but they still are disturbed sort of from dog walkers, and yeah, quite a lot of disturbance from dog walkers and the ground nesting birds. So that's still impacting our population numbers in the area. We can also find the common lizards, got good populations, so they like the heathland and woodland areas where they like the sunny spots for basking, and also the slow worm, which is also another lizard, legless lizard, likes the heathland and grassland and woodland edges. Also you can find lots of invertebrates to feed on, and also sunny patches to sunbathe. A couple of other notable species that are found in the area. The Saturn beauty moth, which is rare for nuts, and this picture comes from Centre Parks, so it's only found in 2 sites within Notts, so Centre Parks is a record and Clubber Park, which is obviously outside of this focal area. So it's found in sort of deciduous and coniferous woodland areas. Also the large red-belted clearing, which is a day flyer moth, found sort of in woodland and heathland areas. This is a nationally scarce bee moth. So yeah, so we're quite lucky to have that in our area. And then it's sorry. Also, our habitat is really good for a number of species of bats, sort of common pipistrelles, soprano pipistrelles, noctuals, lysels. Because of the water habitat, the wetland habitat that we have in the area, we've also got a really good toad population. And then another invertebrate that's has got a good population within the focal area is the green tiger beetle. So now I'm sort of giving you a quick run through of the types of habitats and the species that we find within the area. It's actually quite, it's a large area and is managed by lots of different organisations. So this map just briefly shows sort of the different organisations that are working in the area. So obviously a large proportion is managed by Forestry England. We've got Notts Wildlife Trust, the County Council, Vikka Water is Newcombe and Sherwood District Council. And then obviously some of the older states still own land in here, so there's still Welbeck own the land, but quite a bit of it is managed by other organisations such as Forestry England, and then obviously this bit here is the Rufford Colliery, which is Harworth group sort of own this bit of land. So the land that is being managed, there's quite a few designated areas within the Clipstone focal area. So I just point out a couple. So we have Reneth Heath, which is a SSSI. So it's designated for having representing good heathland. So it actually has a bit of wet and dry heath on site. Another one that's designated for examples of really good heathland and broadleaved mixed woodland and yew woodland, and also having a dwarf shrub heath is the Sherwood Forest Golf Course SSSI. And then obviously another couple of good examples of heathland that are still remnant in this area. So now I've sort of quickly giving you a rundown of who's working in the area, what are biodiversity resources already. I just thought I'd show you this map, which is from 2012-2013, and this is the biodiversity opportunity map for Clipstone area. So this kind of shows how it was then. So sort of the grey areas are actually the existing heathland, and then obviously the colours are actually how connected all these areas are together. So I thought this was quite a good starting point. So this map is obviously used by lots of the partners to help them focus their resources for optimising biodiversity gains, and is also used as a resource for them to sort of effectively recreate habitat networks at landscape scale. So obviously the principal aim of the biodiversity opportunity mapping is to make this area bigger, better and more connected. So kindly, lots of the other landowners have shared photos with me and some information, so I kind of want to just go through what work they've been doing over recent years and sort of going forward, and then we can see actually how that is already starting to change this connectivity of the heathland in this area. So I'm going to just start with Centre Parks to begin with. So I was a private landowner in the area, and a site that obviously has a large number of visitors throughout the year. It still has great habitat and assemblage of species within the Sherwood village of the Centre Parks. So this site is a mosaic habitat of sort of lowland heathland, mixed deciduous woodland, coniferous woodland, scrub, lakes and ponds. And as a company, they're committed to protecting the wildlife in their villages to enhance the habitat. So how they're going about doing this is, as you can see from this photo, which illustrates it really nicely, that they're relaxing their mowing regime in order to encourage invertebrates. So you can see there's the shorter amenity areas, and then the longer, less frequently cut woodland edges that's then moves into sort of scrub understory and then into the maturing deciduous coniferous trees. Which is obviously really working really well. So they've got a couple of notable invertebrates that they've recorded on site in recent years. So the silver washed fritillary, which is a species of conservation concern in Nottinghamshire and was recorded in 2019. So So it's slowly moving north, but this is a really important record for Nottinghamshire in this site. And then the other one is of a hornet rove beetle. So this beetle occupies hornets' nests. So they survive by feeding on the detritus at the bottom of a nest. So that includes sort of dead and dying hornets and the larvae. And the senior conservation officer found this beetle in one of their moth traps, most likely because the adults go and feed on oak sap runs at night. So that's how it ended up in the moth trap. But this is really important as it's the only second record in Nottinghamshire, with the first being found in the Sherwood Forest NNR only in 2018. So yeah, they've got some really great invertebrates on the site. So the village also supports sort of small parcels of lowland heathland, which is represented by the purple blocks on this map. So their heathland and acid grassland areas are doing really well at the moment. They're sort of flowering abundantly, the heather is, in late summer, which is obviously great for invertebrate species records in this area. And they've also got a nice mix of sort of bits of scrub gorse as well. But obviously to maintain heathland in favourable conditions, their ongoing management is sort of primarily scrub removal, obviously to prevent encroachment of the woodland onto these heathland areas. And also they're doing some restructuring of their heather as well, so it's not all of the same age class. They're also looking to be creating sort of bare sandy areas. So these through parts of the heathland sort of desire lines are quite good for creating bare areas, and they're also looking at creating invertebrate features such as bee banks, which you do on south-facing slopes, which this photo indicates. And then they also are undertaking some annual bracken control as well, as that outcompetes lots of the species. And they've kindly shared a little video of a single broad-bodied bee hawk moth, which was recorded for the first time in 2019. So I'll just play that, and so hopefully you can see it on here. So it has quite a restricted range, so it's a record is quite scattered within the West Midlands and sort of South Yorkshire. So this is a really good record, as the species is naturally scarce as well. So yeah, they're doing really well, and they've got some really great notable species on site. So obviously they've also got deciduous woodland, which in part was derived from the natural regeneration that links sort of the ancient Sherwood Forest, but also includes the semi-mature woodland that was planted by Centre Parks back in the mid-1980s. So obviously the woodland, the whole site is really good for breeding birds. So they're a district important site for breeding birds. So they have I think about 40 birds breeding on the site. And they're also got really good habitat for bats as well, that we'd obviously already mentioned previously. They're an important species. So they've got common and soprano pipistrelles being recorded, noctuals, lysels, mitosis as well. So it's a really important site within Nottinghamshire for bats generally. So roosting habitat and obviously feeding habitat as well. And then yes, another rare scarce moth recorded on this site for knots associated with mature woodland. Sorry, that was a bit quick. So now briefly moving on to Vikka Water, Country Park, which covers an area of nearly 80 hectares and has been mainly formed from restored pit tips of the Clipstone colliery. So it's composed of sort of a series of hills formed from the colliery spoil mounds, and then intersected by Vikka water stream, which runs down into the large pond, Vikka water pond, which is about 2.5 hectares and is of course fishing lake on site. So yeah, the site is a mosaic of habitats. So the transition between these habitats make it a really good site of conservation value. So the habitats include sort of young woodland and plantation woodland, heathland, acid grassland, improved grassland, semi-improved grassland and wetland habitats. So this is quite nice view, and obviously that's where the colliery stockheads were. So what is so Newark and Sherwood manage the site, what they doing to maintain, preserve and enhance the existing ecology that's on site already? Well, they're grazing with suitable livestock. Obviously some nice pictures of some Herdwick sheep, but they also graze with ponies. So lots of their areas that are on the top of the spoil heaps are fenced off for this purpose for grazing. So they graze sort of in autumn and winter. So this is partly in order to try and improve the species diversity as well as the grassland. They're carrying out quite a lot of scrub clearance in the heather areas to maintain them as open heathland. So lots of gorse and bramble and bracken cutting back on a couple of their sort of shallow pond scrape areas. They're looking at removing willow around it and just opening those pond areas back up again. This picture at the top shows some work that they've done with creating some bare grounds and scrape areas, which are great for invertebrates, and then they've also mounded up the soil at the side, which provide reptile basking banks as well. And then they're also carrying out some woodland thinning, so creating open rides and then using the brush to create habitat piles and windrows. So moving on to another great site within the Clipstone focal area. So this is Sherwood's Pines, or Clipstone Forest, as people know it. So it's kind of often thought as an adventure sort of activity forest for visitors, but Forestry England manage the site in a sustainable way for wildlife, people and timber. So the Forestry England Ecology and Heritage team have been working with the Sherwood Beat Forest team to undertake a review of open space management within the Clipstone Forest area. So this has included sort of groundproofing the FDP open habitats, reviewing the conditions and suggesting future management options for these areas. So from this, Forestry England have undertaken practical work over the past 2 winters to improve open space habitat. So connect key habitats through ride enhancement and look at new methods to sort of better manage these open spaces going forward. To reduce the scrub encroachment, so look at permanent open spaces, sort of including the heathland and acid grassland. So their volunteers have done quite a lot of scrub management, and then they've also done some rotational machinery mulching. They've got birch respacing of transient open spaces. They've been ride widening alongside their thinning operations, which has been followed up by mulching and a mowing regime to keep these open. And then going forward, they're looking at reinstating grazing along Mancunian Valley within the forest. So this management, so there's specific management for each of their open areas within the forest. So depending on the habitat condition and the key species, will have slightly different management to keep them as open and favourable conditions. So moving on to an area that's obviously had quite a lot of work done to since the coal mine closed. It's Rufford Colliery. So the restoration work that's happening there. So this is being undertaken by Harworth in accordance with their planning requirements and under advice from Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust. So this is given an opportunity to recreate sort of the priority habitats within this focal area at a large scale. So they're being recreated in heathland, acid grassland, mosaic, woodland, shallow wetlands have been taking place. So some of the area is in active restoration, while others are already in aftercare. So as part of the restoration, there's normally about a 5-year aftercare plan to maintain them into the habitat that they've been created. So habitat management has included gorse and broom cutting and restructuring of the heathland. So some of the heather has been used as brash on the newly created restoration areas. Also, people that know the area will know the desert that was used by off-road bikes and 4x4s. So this is also being restored into acid grassland and heather areas. So these are a couple of nice overview areas of the colliery. So the winter of 18 and 19, they've done some extensive felling, removing all the conifers and the non-native trees that were planted in the 70s and 80s. So on this picture, you can see the sort of the green boundary here. So these are all the conifers that have been taken. This picture is at a different angle, but this is this section here that is now being all cleared from when this picture was taken. Obviously, this will be restored to native species. So it's actually obviously it's been in restoration for many years and is already showing some really good signs of sort of rare invertebrates that have been found. So last year, one of Notts Wildlife Trust volunteers, Tim Sexton, did a very intense invertebrate survey across the site and found some really notable and interesting species. So he found the jewel wasp, which is this one, which is a notable species, and the painted nomad bee is also a notable species, and the gorse orb weaver, which was sort of the first record in Notts for that species as well. So some great work that's been happening. So just as a reminder, this is what the connectivity map looked like in 2012-2013, and this is how it is currently. So you can actually see all the work that's been happening at the Rufford Colliery area, this bit, and how much it has increased the actual cover of heathland that we've got within the focal area. This bit is partly the golf course as well, so obviously it's a great habitat within here, but you can see that the actual habitat covers more of our area, but then also the connectivity is a lot better. You can see that by it's now green rather than the yellowy colour. So that's really good for obviously habitat and the species for connectivity going forward. And then I'll just show you our current of our woodland connectivity map as well. So you can see actually quite a lot of Clipstone focal area is in the green, so actually quite well connected woodland that we have. But obviously we do still have quite a few bits that are yellow and orange and aren't quite as well connected and don't cover a larger area existing. So organisations are always looking for opportunities of where we can improve this. So going forward, what we are looking to do, so obviously to try and make the Clipstone focal area sort of better, bigger and more connected. There's a couple of projects. So the restoration work at the collieries, there's still some left to do there. So the stocking yard is still left to be restored to heathland. So once the complex is completely restored, this will be 269 hectares of acid grassland, heathland and oakbirch woodland, which will be created in this centre area. And then also as part of the minor to major project, we were funding this area here, which is currently pine and plantation, is 7 hectares of that. So that's sort of the central band. We're going to leave a buffer around the outside. Will be cleared and restored to heathland. So a bit of landscaping, and then it will be sown with the acid grassland, nurse sword mix, and then brashed with locally sourced heather, and that'll add in another connecting corridor between obviously Rough Colliery area and Vikka Water. And then a couple of tree planting are happening in the near future. So Rufford number 3, which is what this area is called, and then this bit of Vickerdale, which is within Vikka Water. So part of the Trees for Climate, the NCC manage Rufford number 3. So they are going to be planting native mixed broadleaf on this area. So this was again originally just planted with a rough grassland, was a former colliery pit tip, but obviously isn't of great biodiversity value. So adding in more broadleaves is going to be great for this area. And then Vickerdale is part of Vikka Water that used to be grazed but is no longer intensively grazed. So they're going to be planting 6,000, 7,000 trees on this about just over 4 hectare area. So more intense planting at the bottom, and then thinner as they're coming up towards the Heathland area. So planting with a mix of species associated with the area and for the conditions of the site. So closer down to the bottom, which is wetter, there'll be willow and alder, and then sort of moving up, there's going to be a mix of oak, field maple, rowan, hawthorn, holly and silver birch. And obviously with the not as close planting, will create more open glades and rides within the structure, how they're going to plant. Then obviously we've got a great biodiversity resource within the Clipstone area, but we also need to be just looking outside of our area. So trying to link up with other sites, so such as Tipping's Wood, which is managed by the County Council, which was restored from Bloodworth Colliery. So it's got deciduous woodlands and sort of grassland and wetland areas. This yellow strip is the Sustrans disused railway, and as part of the minor to major we'll be carrying out work to improve the sort of Heathland corridor on that area. Intake Wood, which is Newark and Sherwood District Council, are looking to turn that back into native oak birch woodland and areas of heathland regeneration. It's currently more of a pine plantation, so going forward in the future that's will be another site to link in with. And then and Spar Ponds, which is managed by Forest Town Nature Conservation Group. So it's a mix of broadleaf woodland, semi-mature acid grassland, and 4 spring-fed ponds, which is a great site for wildlife, and it's also great for community access. So it's right next to Clipstone. So the volunteer group sort of manage it for wildlife and the visitors, and obviously doing a great job, and they've had records of lesser spotted woodpecker drumming, kingfishers. They've got a good toad population. Volunteer tasks have included hedgerow enhancement, wood thinning, and sort of creating habitat piles and dead hedges with the material that they clear. Obviously during COVID the site has been used quite a lot, so they've had to do put some new paths in. So they've moved a path away from the water's edge and put it through the more ancient sweet chestnut habitat, so people can sort of vary the habitat that they see as they walk through. So this is another site that we should sort of be looking at to connect up with as a linking habitat. So with that in mind, this map sort of shows a couple of those changes. So this area restored to heathland, and it's a slightly sort of the connectivity is greater, hopefully going forward, but there's still quite a lot of opportunities still left that we can do to get greater biodiversity gains with restoring sort of oak birch woodlands and heathlands and things. So our partners are always looking to see how we can sort of better improve connectivity and actually enhance the habitat that we have already. So they're all working together. And then obviously looking forward, we'll be looking at how the elm scheme develops and how obviously sites can link with this. So obviously the sites that I've mentioned, but obviously there's quite a lot of farmland as well around this area and how that's going to be beneficial.